Global warming is not global, and the northern hemisphere is cooling. New anomalies are rising in the atmosphere and oceans that will change weather patterns as we move deeper into the year. This is from Rhoda Wilson. When climate alarmists push their agenda of catastrophic human climate change, it's largely on the assumption that the Western world is causing global warming. The largest countries in the West are located in the northern hemisphere. A Twitter user has pointed out an anomaly in monthly temperature changes that proves that global warming is not global, nor is the northern hemisphere, so the West, experiencing overheating. When climate alarmists push their agenda of anthropogenic climate change, this is largely based on the assumption that the Western world is causing global warming. The largest countries in the West are located in the northern hemisphere, even China, which is the worst greenhouse gas emitter, as you can see. A Twitter user pointed out an anomaly in the monthly temperature changes, proving that the global warming is not global in the northern hemisphere, therefore the West is experiencing overheating. It's argued that a major component of anthropogenic climate change is global warming, referring to the gradual increase in the Earth's temperature caused by human-induced increase in greenhouse effect as concentrations of greenhouse gases increase, mainly from the burning of fossil fuels, such as coal, oil, and natural gas. It's argued that a major component of anthropogenic climate change is global warming, which refers to the gradual increase in the Earth's temperature caused by anthropogenic increase in the greenhouse effect as the concentrations of greenhouse gases, mainly from the burning of fossil fuels, such as coal, oil, and natural gas. And the West, repeatedly the West, generally considered to be made up of US, Canada, European countries, Australia, and New Zealand, has been blamed for increasing the greenhouse effect. Canada, European countries, Australia, and New Zealand has been blamed for this. The greenhouse gas footprint, or carbon footprint, is the way climate risk scientists measure the gas emissions that are related to climate change and linked to human activities, or consumption gas emissions related to climate change linking to human production or consumption activities. According to their calculations, the US is the second largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world after China, but America and Europe are to blame for China's emissions according to them. According to the calculations, the US is the second largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world after China, but America and Europe are to blame for China's emission according to a 2009 report by the Guardian newspaper, with a 2009 report by them saying full extent of Western responsibility for China's greenhouse gas emissions revealed by the new study, wrote the Guardian. The full extent of the West's responsibility for China's greenhouse gas emissions has been revealed in a new study. European Parliament says greenhouse gas emissions by country and sector. European Parliament. Zaki tweeted two comparative charts. Zaki tweeted charts from Oxford University, Our Data, Our World in Data, OWD for short, from Oxford University's Our World in Data, showing the change in temperature from month to month for the last 10 years, which shows the change in temperature for month for the last 10 years. The chart was for the North Hemisphere and the other for the Southern Hemisphere. The graphs represent data for the combined change in land surface air and sea surface water temperature, given as a deviation from 1951 to 1980 mean. Data obtained from National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, Goddard Institute for Space Studies, and one graph was for the Northern Hemisphere, the other for that hemisphere. The graphs represent data for combined change in land surface and air and sea surface. NASA also used the data to create monthly temperature anomaly maps to show how hotter or colder an area may be in a given month compared to the norm for the same month in the same region from 1951 to 1980. It's to repeat that these maps do not depict the actual temperature, but instead show the temperature anomalies, or how much it's changed, to show how much warmer or colder an area can be in a given month compared to the norm for the same month in that period of time, 1951 to 1980. And it's important to reiterate, the maps do not depict the absolute temperature, but instead the temperature anomalies, how much it has changed. For a few years now, NASA has been releasing animations or videos from the GISS data, the data set showing the seasonal cycle of global temperature anomalies each month since 1880, showing how much the global monthly temperature has been above or below the global average temperature since 1980 to 2015. And there are in the article color-coded videos. Normal temperatures are shown in white, higher than normal temperatures in red, and lower than normal temperatures are in blue. Normal temperatures calculated for 30-year base period 1951 to 1980. Every few years, NASA releases animations or videos from GISS dataset showing the seasonal cycle of the global temperature anomalies for each month from 1880. Now, global temperature anomalies from 1880 to 2022. NASA global temperature anomalies from 1880 to 2022, January 17, 2023. In 2020, two of America's most respected and prolific atmospheric physicists, MIT Professor Emeritus Richard Lindzen and University of Alabama Huntsville Professor John Christie, wrote a paper to explain how the dataset is actually obtained. And they're the most respected prolific atmospheric physicists, and referenced by policymakers and the media as a record of global surface temperature, and which fits into the popular narrative associated with climate alarmism. One of the aspects of the NASA file that the document addresses is how the file is constructed and presented and why it is misleading, referred to by policymakers and the media as a record of global surface temperature, and where it fits into the popular narrative associated with climate alarmism. One of the aspects of the NASA file that the paper addresses is the implications of how the file is constructed and presented and why it is misleading. Quote, to disguise the fact that global averages are small remnants of large numbers whose accuracy is questionable, common presentation plots the global average anomalies without the scattered points and enlarge the scale so that the changes appear large, it says. To disguise the fact that the global averages are small remnants of large numbers whose accuracy is questionable, common presentations plot the global average anomalies without the scattered points and enlarge the scale so that changes appear large. It's exactly what OWD has done. The global warming monthly temperature anomaly is noted in document 9, page 9. It's exactly what has been done. And if you open the OWD page for global warming monthly temperature anomaly, you'll see that the default graph with no scattered points starts in 1880, and you will see that the default graph starts then. Our World in Data landing page. Despite their revelations, the global climate change narrative is starting to collapse using their own graphic representations, and despite their statements, the global climate change narrative is changing, it seems. In the sideline below here, you can see graphs showing sources from OWD with a reduced time frame showing only the last 10 years of data from April 15, 2014 to April 15, 2023. The first shows the global monthly changes in temperature. The second is filtered for the southern hemisphere only, and the third for the northern hemisphere. And the slideshow shows that there are 3 graphs taken from OWD, but with a reduced time frame to show only the last 10 years. Our World in Data global warming monthly temperature anomaly, and the graphs seem to show that the northern hemisphere is cooling while the southern hemisphere is warming. What these graphs seem to show is that the northern hemisphere is cooling. In other words, the hemisphere where the largest Western nations committing emission greenhouse crimes, quote unquote, are located is cooling, In other words, the hemisphere where the largest Western nations committing these emissions are cooling, in fact cooling. The fact that Northern Hemisphere is cooling is supported by the latest scientific studies that show that Europe's temperature will decrease slightly in the next 15 to 20 years. And the change in Europe's climate is due to the weakening of the North Atlantic Oscillation and the North Atlantic Sol. It's noting that the stream, North Atlantic, the Gulf Stream, is nothing to do with the shutdown of the emissions reduction or any other human interventions causes that give climate risks, the climate risks. Now, Europe climate riskologists say will put global warming on hold. This change in Europe's climate is due to the weakening of the North Atlantic Oscillation and the cooling of the North Atlantic. It's nothing to do with the shutdown of emission reduction, greenhouses, or any other human interventions. Now, considering their data, census temperature in all hemispheres, perhaps NASA and OWD should have interactive titles on their images and writing that change from global warming to global cooling, depending on where to the world data. This, of course, is one of the advantages of using neither of these terms and instead the blanket phrase of climate change. Given that their data shows discontinued temperature trends across the hemispheres, perhaps they should have interactive titles. And this I've translated for you from a Greek article. So it seems like from their own data, the scientists have found that the trend is global cooling in the Northern Hemisphere, so some very odd reason. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.